In this episode, we sit alongside Michael Palank and Nelson Mills, two entrepreneurs, one an investor, general partner, the other a founder CEO, both dedicated to investing their time into ideas that matter. Welcome to TLC Equation, the Aftershow, where we will dive deep and reflect on the quality time I spent with Brett Adcock, founder and CEO of Vettery, Archer Aviation, and now Figure. Together, we cover several topics of significance and, most importantly, the pivotal role of a clear vision along the entrepreneurial journey, ultimately attracting missionaries who bring a unique collection of shared values in order to make big ideas into a reality. Welcome to TLC Equation, the Aftershow. Michael Palank is a general partner at Mac Venture Capital, who's been at the fund since its inception in January of 2019. Michael aims to help entrepreneurs, artists, and influencers develop and grow their businesses. At Mac, Michael focuses on seed stage, consumer, and enterprise startup investing across several sectors, including national security. Michael has nearly a decade of experience working both in and alongside early stage startups in the media and technology sectors. We are co-invested in several companies together. He has become a close friend and ally. I am better because I have come to know Mike. We also welcome Nelson Mills, CEO, founder of Vatten Systems. As a lifelong sailor, he started Vatten to build the future of autonomous underwater vehicles. At the core of Vatten's R&D efforts is advanced navigation software that is effective in GPS, vision, and comms-compromised environments, all while reducing hardware costs. During his career, he led hull development at Pure Watercraft, an electric boating startup that has raised $170 million in funding. He later consulted on R&D for hydrofoiling electric boats. Nelson interned at Lux Capital. He holds a BA and MBA from Columbia University. This production is brought to you by BVVC, an Inception seed stage venture fund. We are hands-on investors focused on the evolution from first adopters to mass market when early support matters most to founders. We are dedicated to accelerating proven national security technology while allowing first-look access to U.S. Special Operations, acting as a trusted fund in the field. We created BV from inception to invest in mission-first founders developing next-generation technology companies. These technologies have enormous commercial applications and the potential to provide U.S. Special Operations with cutting-edge, real-time prototypes to leverage for the broader defense and the commercial sectors of the United States and our allies everywhere. In a world where innovation must collide with duty, there stand pioneer builders who envision a safe and extraordinary future for the United States and our allies. I'm Joe Musselman, founder, managing partner at BVVC. Throughout this production, we collide with mission-first founders and funders, all with a single objective: to reaffirm America's position as the world's leader in computer software, hardware, and advanced manufacturing technologies. To know more about our commitment to reshape tomorrow, please visit bv.vc. Let's reimagine national security and protect our future together. I'm so happy that, one, I'm glad that you guys have already met. That's going to help the conversation. But Nelson, just to give you a friendly backstory on Mike, I was a freshman at DePaul University when you were an outgoing senior. Is that correct? I always forget that, whether I was a sophomore or a freshman.
I'm not that old. I think I was a sophomore or junior. I was class of 02. So I don't know when did you come in?
You graduated in 02?
I graduated DePaul in 02. I came in.
Yeah, so you were a senior. Yeah, you were a senior. Yeah, I graduated 06.
Okay. I thought we were closer, but I guess we just had that 1 year. We were in the same fraternity as well, Nelson.
Yeah. And then Nelson, the other point I was going to mention about Mike is when I decided to come into venture, obviously I knew I had connected with Mike at different events, and then I reached out to him, and he set a standard for me in venture, which I don't even know if I've properly communicated this to you, Mike. So maybe this is the opportunity to do that. But you go into venture, you think you have a skill set, right, that might make you okay at the job. Like no one ever just walks into venture and is somehow spectacular at being a VC. It doesn't work. I don't think it works like that. Like you need to learn. You have to have tutors and mentors. And yes, you have raw skill sets that are both God-given and learned skill sets that come from experience. And then you try to collide all of these walks of life that puts you in a direction that you think you can go into venture capital. So that's the state of mind that I was at that point in time in 2019 when I first reached out to Mike. And I said, look, man, there's no ego. I hope to never have any ego throughout this space. We all have ego, but I promise you, I'll never let it become master of the house. Help me understand how you target, how you prospect, how you organize, all of these things. And he's like, oh, here, I'll send you all my Google Sheets, like with how we prospect and like who some of our major funds are and what phases they are in. And I think everyone on this call shares this attribute of like know enough to be dangerous, right? And that phrase always resonated with me in a lot of different ways. And Mike showed me just enough to then now I have, like a multi-billion-dollar ecosystem that I've organized according to stage and that I've used during a fundraise. I would have never have known how to properly rack and stack not just the funder side of the business, but the founder side of the business. If Mike didn't, without any hesitation, share a lot of stuff that took a long time to put together. So Mike, that generosity gene that you showed early on was so impressive. And I tell everybody about that. So whenever I talk to someone, they're like, who should I talk to? She reach out to Mike. You have to talk to Mike at Mac. So it really rubbed off on me in the right way, man. So thank you for that.
I appreciate that. And I was just paying it forward because that was done to me. I have a fairly atypical background for what I do now. And I would not be in this business were it not for people doing the same to me as I was trying to figure out what it meant to be a VC and right. How to be great at this job. And how to get a fund up and running from scratch. What's a fund administrator? What's an LPA like?
Right. No one a PPM. What? Like, what is this?
I had
this
someone
document?
give me their playbook on how to get a fund off the ground, and I had partnered with someone really great that was high profile. My partner Adrian is the former mayor of DC, and he was looking for someone to like help manage all the logistics of getting a fund up and running. And, I was able to do that. And that's, he saw that and quickly made me sort of his equal partner. And without those people giving me, that information, I wouldn't have been able to demonstrate to Adrian what I was capable of and who knows what I'd be doing now. So I think we're all here probably because of people, that have paid it forward or given us advice or guidance. I think anyone that's successful, it's almost, it's almost necessary. It's interesting. I mean, we'll talk about, but Brett kind of said he's always wanted that. He never had it. He sort of, made it happen himself. But I think there's no shortcuts to success. But having folks like that in your life can certainly help.
Absolutely, Nelson. Who unintentionally or intentionally helped you get to where you are?
Yeah, that's that's a good question. I think growing up with my parents just being entrepreneurs, they ran a restaurant, they were real estate entrepreneurs, they built a landlord business from the ground up. I was always interested in building a company, and they just also instilled like a moral framework, a kind of framework of hard work that has been super important to what I do and how I approach things. And then, I think later on, I've had a mixture of bosses who have had good impacts and bad impacts, ones who've taught me what to do right and what not to do. But, kind of similar, to Mike getting into venture capital originally, I had some folks like Peter at Lux was a huge mentor to me and was super helpful and gave me a lot of good advice. And, folks like that have been instrumental. And then, on kind of my career journey, in terms of, or my entrepreneurship journey, I think, Decisive Point has been really key to that. It's funny though, like with Brett's talking, when he was talking about mentors, there's been a lot of folks who have been helpful and kind of inspiring, but I'm not sure that I also have this like necessarily a mentor where I'm like always going back to and getting that kind of key advice. It's more of these relationships that have existed and been very helpful. But yeah, I also don't necessarily feel like I have that direct mentor. So I kind of connected with his statement there. And I think it is like an important, amazing thing to get, but it's also not a roadblock to success. If you can find a mentor, amazing, but also like, keep on doing your thing and moving along, right? And doing what you think's right.
One thing that resonated with me strongly is his background in the Midwest. So when he talked about the no mentorship,
I've never had a mentor really in 20 years. And I think, not because I just don't want one or haven't been, I just like have never, for whatever reason, have never had that like help. And I think there's been certain times through my career where there was somebody there that was extremely helpful. But I've really never had this like oracle advisor where I can go to that like could like help me out. And I think, there's definitely been times that when you rewind the tapes, like this person came in, they were an advisor to me at Vettery, and they really helped us scale the organization from 30 to 300. Great. And has that person, been helpful in other areas outside of that? No. Do I wish they were? Yes. And I have a lot of, this is like close to me because I close to my heart because I feel like I have 30 emails, 30 messages per week of entrepreneurs that were me 15 years ago that are asking for my help, that are asking for me to be a mentor, to ask questions to, be a board member or whatever. And I just don't have the time for it. Like, and I didn't have that. And I feel like I really wanted that a long time ago. And I still do, right? Like it'd be great to have somebody to talk to, and, just get overall advice from. We definitely do have a really strong board and investors here. I mean, you've been really helpful. A lot of other folks have been really helpful here. But I think it's just something that's been missing through my whole career.
I had made that comment that your first, this is the TLC equation. We talk about teams, leadership, and culture, right? These are three very mystical things that I don't think are talked about enough, especially amongst those that are the highest performers, right? Because for some reason, if you say, hey, man, you've built an extraordinary team, how'd you do that? For the ones that are doing it the best, they actually can't tell you how, right? It's something that's so instinctive to their gut, to their nature of selecting personalities and saying, yes, there's something about this person. They can give you kind of their mindset around it, but there's a quote from Jobs that I always think about where someone called him a creative genius, and he goes, that makes me feel really uncomfortable. Like, I don't think of myself as being creative, and I certainly don't think of myself as being a genius. And I think that's true for some of the highest performers in the world, especially technical entrepreneurs. So one question I asked Brett was, well, look, this is TLC Equation. The first team that you were ever a part of was your family. The first leader you've ever followed were your parents, for better or for worse, depending on the situation. And the best culture the first culture that you were a part of is your extended family, those that loved you and said they cared about you.
I mean, my parents are great. I think it definitely helped instill like a pretty strong work ethic. I would say we woke up early. We were put to work basically when we weren't at school, things like that. I think definitely, I think Midwest has like really good people, good values. Yeah, I mean, I think it taught me a lot about working hard, and it taught me a lot about, I think in some way, entrepreneurship. Like you got to go out and get your hands dirty and go build stuff. But yeah, it was great.
So to me, he may not point to someone in a network and say, he was my mentor, she was my coach, he was someone that I leaned on. But that upbringing on a farm, to me, that's where he initially learned those gut instincts about great TLC.
For sure.
No doubt.
I mean, we're all the product of our environments. I think anyone, is just it's a summation of your experiences, the people that you've grew up around and you've surrounded yourself with. I spent a decade working in Hollywood and got to know some really amazing artists, and it was always interesting to me, and maybe like Prince may have been the highest profile of someone who definitely is seen from the outside as this genius and groundbreaker, and then you get to sort of, not that I really got to know him, but you get to know him better than the average person. And you realize just what you said, Joe, is these people kind of don't see themselves as these extraordinary individuals, as crazy as that may sound, or as these geniuses. I mean, clearly they all are their unique characters, but they're just them. This is their life. It's kind of all they've known. And it's sort of like, it's empowering because, Steve always said, this is like, the greatest moment of freedom is when you realize you can have any impact on the world that you want to have. Like anyone can make a difference. You don't need to be seen as a genius or super special. And in getting to know Prince, he was a guy from, Minnesota. And I'm like, wow, this guy just looks at himself like he's just a normal person, but how is that even possible? He's Prince. And that was just eye-opening to me. And it was empowering. I'm like, I never saw myself as being especially important. I didn't have any kind of unique upbringing or anything, but I'm like, if Prince feels that way, then maybe I can go on to do something extraordinary.
100%. I have a quote upstairs that says, "Can you make it rain harder?" It's one of my favorite all time, like just make it happen quotes. You're right about Prince too. I mean, no one ever thinks about, oh yeah, Prince from Minnesota. It's like, no one ever says that. Like, it's just Prince. Yeah. You don't think of him. You think of him as almost higher than.
He's a human being that, puts his pants on, one leg at a time like the rest of us.
So I have a two-part question for both of you that I love asking people. And I ask entrepreneurs this all the time. We'll start with you, Nelson. Nelson, mother, father, I'm guessing, two very different people that instilled two very different lessons on you in life. I'll give you guys an example. My mother really pushed one lesson on me throughout all my life, and both my parents are still with me. But after they are no longer with me, I will remember these lessons each. My mom taught me to always take responsibility for your actions. Extreme ownership, long before extreme ownership was a thing. Someone said once when I was in kindergarten, first grade, boys will be boys. My mom she didn't want anything to do with that. She's like, no, that was him misbehaving and he's going to take ownership for his actions. And I remember that in like kindergarten. And then my father taught me a very simple lesson: is leave everything better than when you found it. And the implications of those two things repeated over and over again, my mother would say, who can change that? So if I were to complain, who can change that? If I didn't like my teacher, who can change that? Oh, math is hard. Who can change that? Right? So she was always putting the ownership back on me. And now as a father of a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and one on the way, those are certainly two things that I want to impress upon my children. So what are those lessons? One from your mother, one from your father, that you will take with you for the rest of your life. And Mike, you get the bonus spot because you get to think about this a little bit longer before we get to you.
Yeah, it's a great question. My dad, I think he taught me like resilience and continuing on. I mean, I think the example of his life, he kind of had tragedy after tragedy happen. He was orphaned at 14. His brothers ended up passing away not that much longer or later on in life. And he's someone who, had great like strength, and you could kind of just feel it. And someone who just kept going and kept making, I think, good decisions and almost like, they say, founders should be super resilient. And he was that kind of person, right?
That's it. Yeah. Resilience from your father. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Just a very strong person. And so it would have been his birthday in like 3 days. He passed away 6 years ago from cancer.
Wow. And he's super proud of you, man. I know that.
Thanks. Yeah. No, I appreciate it. But like, even to his like final day, I've never seen someone like so damn strong, like just like, in a healthy way, not like just a, whatever, negative kind of masculinity way, but in like a really like healthy masculine way. And so that was always like, super impressive. And I think has inspired me to like, these are things or obstacles you come against that are overcomable, and it will be, okay, and you will get past it. I think that's something as an entrepreneur you really have to understand and be able to kind of overcome. And then, I think my mom's really always inspired like a really good moral framework. I mean, she was an entrepreneur. She was a chef who started a bunch of her own restaurants. And she, I think, has always like treated people in a really good way. And I think, kind of like Brett was talking about, like no assholes. My mom's very much a no assholes person.
Well, she was in hospitality, right?
Yeah, it was very easy to have assholes in hospitality too.
That's right. And did you work with your mother at the restaurant at all?
Yeah, I did a little bit when I was a kid, and then after I graduated college, I actually worked 6 months. My mom and I started a restaurant together, and ran it for 6 months, and then I went off to grad school.
I feel like everyone in the world needs to have some hospitality experience.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you learn a lot. And I was in the kitchen, and that was the most intense and hardest job I've ever had, honestly.
Yeah, no question about that. Well, look, man, so your father is resilience, and your mother is morality. Gave you a moral framework and to work within. So I love that. They're both very proud of the Viking that they've created here today, and the builder that you are, man. I know I am. Mike.
I love it. My mom moved away. No, not moved away, but she became a flight attendant, I think at the age of 18. The youngest age she could become a flight attendant, she became a flight attendant for a regional airline called Ozark in the Midwest. And, she grew up as one of 6, middle-class family in this Italian neighborhood called The Hill in St. Louis. And she just they didn't have a lot of money. Her dad was a mailman by day and a waiter by night.
Get this. Your mom and my dad are from the same neighborhood in St. Louis.
No.
Yes.
What?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Your dad grew up in The Hill?
Yeah, he has family there to this day. Yes.
Oh my God, that's insane.
That's
man.
crazy.
That's amazing.
Sorry. Go ahead.
She grew up on The Hill, and her dad worked 2 jobs, like to kind of support this large Italian family, and they really didn't go anywhere. They didn't travel anywhere, and she wanted to go see the world, and she became a flight attendant to do that. And I think she instilled a sense of wonder and adventureness in me. I mean, she sort of says, if anyone's at fault for you like leaving St. Louis and never coming back, it's probably me. And, in a way, she's right. I have this sense of wanderlust and curiosity for the world that I think originated in her. And I would not be the person I am today. I wouldn't be living here if it weren't right.
Wanderlust from your mom. That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. And then my dad, and another comment you made in the conversation with Brett, you said something along the lines of, it's the small things you got to focus on. The big things sort of take care of themselves, or this idea of atomic habits. That's my dad. I mean, I give him trouble for this, but his favorite phrase is, one step at a time, one day at a time. I'm that. I'm also a big thinker, but to the extent that I have these atomic habits, it comes from my dad. He told me in my first job when I was 16, just put away 10% from every paycheck. And don't touch it, and let that compound. And if you do that, for your whole life, you'll be very happy and likely very successful. But he was just an atomic habits kind of guy. Made me make my bed every day. He made his bed every day. He served in the Navy during the Korean War. He probably picked that up there. And I'm very much a checklist manifesto guy. I do sort of, I try to be driven by these small atomic habits, because if you can nail those, I think you do have to have a sense of long-term thinking and vision. But if you can nail the small things consistently with discipline, some of those big things will just start to manifest in your life almost magically. And I'll give my dad credit for instilling that in me.
I love that. That's the perfect compliment that you just outlined, actually. You have the wanderlust.
Yeah, right.
You have the attention to detail.
Right. My dad had no interest in leaving St. Louis. He's lived in the same 5 square miles his entire life, which is the joke with him. So he definitely does not have wanderlust. But,
our fathers are similar in that way too, man. Like my father, 5 square miles, loves it, calls it home. That's it. He's totally satisfied.
Amazing. Yeah.
That's too good. Yeah. That's too good. One thing that I, here on the Aftershow, we dive deep on a conversation that was had with an entrepreneur that's building something big. And I pull in people with meaningful backgrounds and values and perspective to kind of comment on conversation, because it gives us an opportunity to highlight other people that are also builders, founders, and funders. And so, one thing that you brought up, Mike, in your notes when we were going through some of the timestamps, is we have to get comfortable as a society just taking bigger risks and getting bigger goals. And how come we can't move as fast as we used to and make as much badass stuff as we used to make? Like, how do we get back to that state, and how do we find and nurture more of the Kelly Johnsons into the world? So why don't you tell us a bit about the Kelly Johnsons of the world, which I'm not going to promote that. Of course, Kelly Johnson's from the Midwest as well, as so was Brett, and so as Mike and I, and Nelson's okay. You were East Coast, or were you once Midwest too?
Upstate New York.
Upstate New York. Okay, so still great.
Almost.
Still
we'll
great.
Adopt him.
No doubt. No doubt. Still great. And I have my own opinion on this part, and Nelson, I'm sure you do too. But Mike, walk us through your thinking of the Kelly Johnsons of the world, and why are we here? When did we start becoming so cautious as a society?
Yeah. Kelly Johnson is this guy that worked for Lockheed Martin when he was fairly young, helped stand up their Skunkworks program. I think as a 20-year-old, the guy, was helping design aircraft for Lockheed Martin. And I think throughout the course of his career, he worked on, I think, upwards of like 15 to 20 different aircraft, including the U-2 bomber, which today is unheard of. I think if you work as an engineer at Lockheed Martin today, if you're lucky, you kind of maybe touch one aircraft throughout the course of your entire career. And that's maybe less a factor of the individual person, more a factor of the system, that it takes so much longer and we move so much slower in developing these sort of, exquisite systems. And I think that's sort of a byproduct of, the direction we headed post World War II, and how, the world has shifted and defense spending has shifted, but just culturally how we've shifted. And, there's this saying in Silicon Valley, move fast and break things. And maybe in the software industry, this idea of taking big risk has permeated and has, continues, to this day. But there's something about building hardware where, everything had to be, perfect. And, any kind of mistake, obviously, like there are reasons for this, right? You're building a rocket it's going to carry humans to space. You want that thing to be perfect. You can't, put lives at risk. But I think there are ways where we can, I think Elon Musk has really demonstrated this really well. It's, I think, one of the keys of his success is that he realized that, you don't need this 99% sort of reliability, redundancy in everything you build. I don't think he'd call it cutting corners, but you can find alternatives and that, that introduce more risk into what you're building, but that's okay. That's okay. You can sort of sacrifice, some of this reliability to gain more speed. And I think in this today's world, speed is very important, especially in, when you're building something around hardware. And excited to see companies sort of adopting this, let's take more risk. Let's be more experimental to move faster, to push the envelope farther, and just really excited what this kind of, renewed mindset of what we had in the Kelly Johnson era will unlock for all of us.
Totally. I joke a lot. So part of on this particular topic, because values are things that we set a high bar for, and we try to achieve those values. Values are verbs; they inspire action, and we're trying to move towards the direction of reaching a value. The last 30 years or so in technology, I love using Facebook's famous value that you brought up: move fast, break things. But there was an evolution of that value that really signifies and is almost a perfect analogy for the last 30 years in technology. First, it was move fast and break things. Then they became very big, right? Then it was move fast and make things, okay? After the IPO, now it's just move fast, right? Because they can't even do that anymore. So they have to make it a value that they work towards. And watching that one value evolve over 30 years, move fast and break things, move fast and make things, and now it's just, let's cut that off and let's just try to move fast, is very analogous to the last 30 years, in some cases with some some parts of the technology sector. Nelson, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point, which is as companies grow bigger, it becomes harder and harder for them to innovate, right? And like defense is an area where you've had big prime players who have dominated the market, and innovation has really slowed down. But I think the reason why we went from the Wright brothers to the B-2 bomb or the B-52 bomber in the 50s, and now we're still using the B-52 bomber, whatever 70 years later,
right,
is also it's part of that. Like you went from an industry that was completely nascent and was rapidly accelerating,
yes,
and they solved the easier problems first, and then they kind of like caught up with technology, and the problems got harder and harder, and the companies got bigger and bigger, and they started moving slower and slower. And I think it's just kind of the nature of technology, and we see these booms around technology every once in a while, like AI, and I think robotics. We're starting to see a new boom in that, and but as those companies within that hemisphere kind of grow bigger, things will slow down. So there is this question of how do you keep disruption up? How do you keep innovating and moving faster? And a key part of that is having a country that has a culture of
yes,
founding companies and trying to tackle really, really big, risky problems.
yes. You know what? I think this is one reason why Mike and myself are VCs. We could have done other things, but there's something about the early stages of something that hopes to become something. Like that's very inspirational for me to be a part
Definitely.
of, a sliver part of that. Some paths are forged through relentless grit, unwavering dedication, and a touch of destiny. Meet Rebecca Rouse and Joel Del Rosario, two souls whose journey epitomize these virtues. Rebecca, a force in the weightlifting arena, stands resolutely among the nation's finest. And then there's Joel, a Marine Corps warrior with nearly 2 decades of service, marked by multiple combat deployments and a Purple Heart, awarded for the sacrifices made in the line of duty. Together, their shared spirit of tenacity and honor, resilience, culminated in a vision: Semper Stronger. This isn't just a fitness initiative, it's an institution forged from valor and ambition. It beckons those with the heart of a champion, offering not just routines but transformational journeys. Their workouts, whether centered around the finesse of a kettlebell or the might of a barbell, are designed for the dedicated, those who pursue mastery with every heartbeat. And a special shout out to our brave first responders and military personnel. Semper Stronger reveres your dedication, crafting a regimen that's every bit as resilient as you are. For those with an insatiable thirst for excellence, where challenges are but milestones on the road to greatness, Semper Stronger is your anthem. Join their legacy. Immerse yourself in excellence at semperstronger.com and connect with them on social media at Semper Stronger. Nelson, you said something that based on the Brett interview about shipping product, and it really resonated with you, that a core deep commitment of mission and the way Brett talks about shipping product and shipping product rapidly, hire in a picky way, all these things, you marked that as something that really resonated with you.
This is something that really confused me, and I think confuses everybody in the world, where people feel like, being successful in your career and all this means like you're managing people, you're in the side like office corner suite, you're wearing a suit every day coming in. Like that is just couldn't be further from what's really true, like the axiomatic truth to the world. What's the truth is a company is only as good as the product or service they ship. If the product's really great, people will use it, people will talk about it. You will have good margins and you will renew that customer. If your product's not great or you don't continue to innovate because other folks make great products, you will die in the limit. So most companies are dying worldwide right now. Most companies are getting eaten by software, by AI, by new startups, like everywhere in the world.
So what spoke to you in the way that he was outlining that part of the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, he just gets to the core of why a startup or a company exists, right? Which is to build a product, and you've got to do it quickly, and you have to be hyper focused on shipping that product. I think it's very, very important to distinguish focus on ship product versus focus on product, right? Because focus on product can be good. People say that as a maxim. Okay, yeah, focus on product, great. But I've also been at companies or seen companies where there's a focus on the wrong parts of the product, right? And that gets to what Brett's saying of like, spend your time in the right places, right? And the focus should be on shipping product. How do you build a product that is shippable, that is a commercial product, and how do you get to that as quickly as possible, right? And how do you spend times on the right things that enable that? And if you spend time on the wrong things, you can go 7 years, a decade without making a whole lot of progress or shipping product.
Completely agree with that. Mike?
Delian at Founders Fund, who co-founded Varda, he talks about how at Varda they have in their office I think it's either how many days or weeks since the company started. And he goes in every day, and he just, it's a constant reminder of how many days have passed. And I've encouraged my founders in their company updates to put, how many weeks has it been since you started the company? So you're reminded, your investors are reminded, how long has it been? Because I think if you do that, again, it's kind of like making your bed. It's like you look at that ticking clock, every month, every quarter, and you're just reminded, okay, this is how long it's been. What have we done? And as you see that number tick up, you're like, okay, man, it's been 52 weeks. Where are we? What have we done? And just never forget how long it's been, because, I think speed is of so much importance. And that, obviously ties into shipping product, because that is sort of the ultimate thing, is building and shipping whatever it is that you're making. And I think this constant sense of urgency, even when you are a scaled and more mature company, I think the second you lose that is the second you start to decline. And, you got to appreciate companies like Amazon and this sort of day one mentality, how, despite their success and size and age, they've continued to innovate and sort of keep that mindset, more or less, that it's still the first week and we have a lot to do, and we're nowhere near where we need to be. And I think if you can keep that mindset as you grow and become successful, then you really have a chance to become hugely successful.
Well, look, this is a big part of TLC Equation. This is what you just outlined, is that every founder's journey emulates each other in the exact same way. It happens in the exact same process. And it's been categorized in very specific elements. And that's why we talk about TLC Equations. So let me give you an example. So Brett is obsessive about the vision of the company. He talked about it. He said, I didn't do anything else until I established this brand identity.
So I spent a lot of time up front before like all this was in place, building the brand. I think that's extremely important. The brand is like a message. It's a way you build. The brand is also a derivative of how much trust you build with people, what you say, what you do. So both at Vettery, my last software company, Archer Aviation, which I founded in 2018, and now Figure, founded in 2022. I spent an enormous amount of time on the name, the brand, the website, the messaging, the mission, vision, value, all the stuff. Like it's almost like a foundational piece. You do it once really well, and that can really grow, and it's really important.
Like, how are we going to be received by the world? How is the world going to receive us? And he goes, I had this idea. It started many, many years ago when I was at Archer, and then the mechanical part of that, and then the AI learning of this. And then he was slowly constructing the story. Again, I don't mean to quote Jobs again, but we cannot connect the dots looking forward. We can only connect them looking backwards. And he clearly outlined his moment of inception to when he had the vision of what he wanted to work on. That's the first variable of TLC Equation. All founders at some point have a vision. They see the way the world can be if they did this thing and how it would work if they got there. So that's why the first variable of TLC Equation is vision. Now, what happens when you have a vision? You start to profess it. You start to talk about it. You start to bring people into that vision with you. And vision is not something that's moving. If you think about a vision, it's like a moment in time. And so when you have this vision, it's stagnant. It's a moment. And that moment is all of your successes, if you were to have them, and what that moment would look like. When you profess that enough, what do you attract? Missionaries. You attract missionaries to the vision. Vision, mission, right? When you have a collection of missionaries, now you have what? A collection of values. So the first part of TLC Equation is VMV. Every founder's journey happens in that exact same way. Nelson had a vision, right? Then he wanted to execute that vision. So he talked about it a lot to people that he cared about, knew and loved. Then he attracted missionaries. There's the core team. Now you're on the road show. Now you have to form some values, right? Because you have a collection of values, and values must be co-authored and co-created. They can't be done in a silo. And the way Brett talked about that, I had this vision, I needed to go out and do this thing. He spent deca millions of his own capital to go all in on this idea, and he attracted people. Mike, I don't know if you have a similar philosophy, but I don't want to invest in founders that I wouldn't want to work for myself. Maybe that's selfish, maybe that's self-centered, but like, if I can quit my job and go work for Nelson, I would do that, because Nelson's working on really cool shit, and I can learn from a leader like him, and I hope I have something to offer him, vice versa. So this gets to that. If you notice that there was this impatience on that call with Brett, like sincere impatience, like, I'm doing this because I know I have to, because it'll help me ship product. I'm doing this because I have to get this message out to the world about what we're building, because I haven't done this in the past. And I realize now this is a bigger mission. I want to build one of the biggest companies the world's ever seen. And to do that, I have to get better at professing the vision. So to your comment, Mike, there's this common enemy, this end of days mentality, this deathbed mentality of urgency that you can feel with founders who are really actually on a true mission, right? The example I give for mission all the time is Martin Luther King in our mall, in our nation's capital. He outlined a vision with so much detail, so much clarity, that he brought you to the hills of this and the mountains of this and the purple plains here and the dining room tables. And you were sitting there in this vision. And that's why he was able to inspire the entire planet with what he talked about. When I feel a founder has that level of clarity and deathbed mentality that if we do not do this, this is what will happen. And you think back to yourself like, my gosh, if he can do 1/16 of what he just outlined, it's almost magic. I want to learn more about that.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you said, Joe. Although I would argue that not all founders, it's probably obvious, have a vision. I think, all founders, are working to solve a problem, and hopefully they have unique insight to this problem. I think just because you're working to do that doesn't mean you have a vision. I think you're probably the same way. I mean, as a VC, you're trying to get in and find those people who have a true vision. There's a difference between, I see a big business opportunity and a problem and I'm looking to solve it, versus I have a vision, and a vision, I think, is a level deeper. And it's all that pre-work that Brett did, kind of writing his manifesto, creating the website, figuring out his logo. That's the kind of work that shows me you actually have a true vision. I try to ask founders, like, what does the world look like in 10 years when your company is wildly successful? How is the world different? And there's just a difference in answers to people that have clearly thought about this and forming a vision, and people that are sort of, kind of making up an answer on the fly. It's sometimes hard to tell the difference, but there is. And it is those folks that, have thought deeply about this and how the world is different in their success and why they're doing what they're doing truly. Those are the folks with the vision. And when you have that, all those other things that you mentioned, then you can really define your values, and then you can sort of build this mercenary team that align with those things. But not everyone has gone to that level of depth.
That's right. And that's a great point. Sorry, Nelson, before I comment further, I want to make sure we hear you.
So your discussion of like the vision process resonated with me, because I remember first hearing Tommy's like general idea of like, attritable AUVs. And I was like, that just caught my imagination. And I was like, I'm starting to imagine this world where, Ukraine has what we're building, and Taiwan has it, and the Philippines and the US. And I'm like, damn, like this can, fundamentally change naval warfare, right? And, we have to build this, because like, if we are successful, we can almost assure world peace, which sounds like crazy, but that is like essentially the vision, is that like, going back to Sun Tzu's maxim of only start a war if you know you can win it. Like if I'm successful, no one will ever think they can win a war against the US and her allies. Right. Like, and that's like the ultimate goal. And I think that's, so important to permeate, not just from me, but to like, my co-founders, to, my employees, and, everyone, my team, everyone that I work with, that, are investors, that will understand, like, we can fundamentally shift the status quo, right, in a way that's really good. And I think a lot of people don't think of defense necessarily as mission driven in a sense, or as like, not in the same way maybe as in like climate change or something, climate tech or something like that. But, we are fundamentally trying to solve like really core, and I think, moral issues. For me, it's more than just like a business, or more than just like enjoying being out on a boat doing testing, which, I love being out in the water and doing stuff, but it's like this core vision and mission we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I have a question on this. Like, it kind of begs the question of, if you're building a marketplace for men's socks, I guess anyone can have a vision no matter what you're doing. If you're building some kind of enterprise SaaS company to make payments go faster, I guess, can you have, I guess the answer is yes, you can have a real vision that can attract, a mercenary team to that. But sometimes maybe it's why I'm so interested in, this space where I'm investing in space companies and defense companies that, who's, if this vision is achieved, we do have a more peaceful and safer world. And I just become less interested in some of these other type of companies, where the founders may have a vision, but I'm like, it just doesn't move me, this vision, to increase, people's access to socks, But I guess anyone can have, I guess there's scales and types of vision, but it's an interesting, I guess, thought that, what flavor or type of vision, is most meaningful.
I mean, think about the biggest companies in the world. If you think about Gusto, it's HR software. If you think about Amazon, it was just an online bookstore, right? But the founders were so pervasive in the vision of what they hoped to create. They took things that didn't really seem, they took the sock store and they turned it into a global empire, right? Yeah. So that goes back to your point, Mike, that not all founders have a vision, meaning not all founders clearly see the future in what the future can actually be as a result of their product. And that's what I listen for. And with a clear vision, by the way, comes followership. People that want to follow you. And that when I initially had my initial diligence calls with Brett before we invested at the Series A, one of the things that kept coming back to mind is the way he would casually mention that this person is coming here from this part in Brett's chapter in life, meaning they're coming to Figure, but I worked with them 7 years ago here. They're coming to Figure because I worked with them 3 years ago here. Dana, his remarkable chief of staff, worked with him back in the day here, went into banking, and is now amongst that crowd that is a recovering banker that we always hear people joke about. And now she's back to purpose-driven work. Why? Because Brett has exceptional followership. And that is something that I qualify and quantify for in the early parts of the diligence lens. That's the more qual side before we get into the quant side. So I want to jump into this other question too about the, Mike, you really outlined this well in your comments, but how Brett is certain that the humanoid figure is in fact the right figure to have when building these bots, and not things that don't look like what we know and what we're familiar with. Your comment reminded me of like, why do we sit humans in self-driving cars around San Francisco, right? We do that because otherwise it would freak people out, right? In mass, just to see a car driving down the street. Why? So we actually put a human to test drive these driverless cars so that when people get in the cars, they're not freaked out that a steering wheel is just moving. It's very similar to this when we talk about humanoids. We're familiar with the figure. It's something we recognize.
And the beauty of this is the whole world that we interact with today was built around a human. It's not as if like the human's the best form factor. It's as if the whole operating system that we live in the physical world was built so that we can interact with it with the human form. We have doors that we walk through. We have stairs. We have specialized tools and machinery. Like it's just we set up this world. We built this world so that we can work with it. And so it's like we're almost like a key in a keyhole in some way. So you really, if you want to build a general purpose robotics program to interact with that world physically, you build a humanoid form. It's for sure the right form factor. It's similar to like analogies if you want to build to interact with the digital world, like the web and internet and stuff. You build the interaction mechanisms are the keyboard and mouse. Like that's how you interact with the whole digital world today.
So I'd love to hear you two talk about this for a bit. Is the human figure the right figure to build the right humanoid, or do we try to build something more, futuristic that doesn't look like us, or do we build stuff in the direction that does, in fact, remind us of ourselves?
Well, I'm not exactly sure. I think, that makes sense in the short term that, to get comfortable with this new technology, it has to be something that's familiar. I spent a decade working in media, and sort of there's this known phenomenon of, each new, technological medium, whether it's, radio or television or film, when it was early, like with television, they were sort of doing, or with radio even, they were sort of doing like live stage plays on radio. So they were sort of taking what was popular in the past of just, stage plays and putting that in the new medium before they figured out, there's all these new ways to capitalize or, new types of formats of content to put through this new medium. And, over time, you got all new types of formats and what's possible. And I do wonder over time, will we need to start with humanoids or with, actual humans and driverless cars? But over time, as people become more comfortable and more understanding of it, can we move to other form factors and things like that? I'm not sure, but something I thought about when Brett made his comment.
I wonder how that lines sociologically with the laws of diffusion of innovation. So like the curve of the early adopters, like if we were to overlay humans' psychology on adapting and adopting to things that they just have never seen before, I would imagine it would parallel the laws of diffusion of innovation in a very similar way, where there's always the folks that get in a car and there's no driver. The three of us would be like, this is fantastic. Like, we've waited a long time for this. Other people would get out of the car and never step back into it again if they saw something like that. So Nelson, what do you think about that?
Yeah. So I think maybe I've read too many, dystopian sci-fi novels, but I actually find humanoid. Yeah, it's very possible. But I actually find humanoid robots kind of creepy. But so it's, for me, it's not a level of comfortableness. But I think Brett makes a good point that like a humanoid robot for many things makes more sense just because it fits in the world, right? It, like, you want a robot to do your dishes, a humanoid robot, is probably makes more sense than some, specialized dishwasher robot, because you want them to do your dishes, you want them to make your bed, you want them to go, do other things in the house. That being said, though, like, a self-driving car is a robot, right? It's a robot. And obviously the form factor is different because for that particular task, it makes more sense. Like when we're building our underwater vehicles are robots, and, a humanoid robot underwater doesn't make any sense. So there are environments where it will make less sense. Or like my friend Rich at Agent, they're building farming robots, right? Like, does it make sense to have a bunch of humanoids out in the fields, like picking berries or weeding? No, probably not. So I think it's a matter of what you're trying to do. I think humanoids have their place. It's a big market to do many like household things and certain workplace things, but there's going to be huge markets around specialized robots doing particular tasks where it just makes more sense to build something that's made for that, right? And that's my view.
It seemed like Brett's vision, his ultimate vision was to get these humanoids in, every household. Like if Elon's ultimate goal is, settling Mars and, enabling us to be multiplanetary, is Brett's ultimate vision to get a robot in every home, Rosie from the Jetsons. And if that's the case, then maybe, like there's been this, natural selection evolution where we as humans have evolved to become really good at doing the tasks. And, if you had one last arm, maybe you weren't as good. And, so I do wonder if there'll be a sort of a type of natural selection in the world of robots where, the robots that, are meant to be in the home actually are, should look like humans because that's the best form factor. But if you're building sort of autonomous underwater drones, it obviously should take a very different type of form factor. So, it's interesting to see how that will play out because I do believe, heavily in the future of robots doing, a lot of the tasks that humans do today. And, be curious to see what form factors those robots take for those different use cases.
I highlighted this entire paragraph, Mike, that you wrote because it spoke to me. We had very similar childhoods. So I think I like to pretend often that I'm an anthropologist, sociologist, and an anthropologist. And those are two fields that really excite me. And I have no formal education in those sectors whatsoever. Just a deep, deep passion to understand how societal trends around values specifically change over time. How our society now looks at itself from a collection of values versus 1900 and how we looked at ourselves and the collection of values as a country. That's always fascinated me, down to the moment we had 13 colonies in this country that led to revolution and so on and so forth. 19th and 20th century history fascinate me. So with that kind of backdrop, I read that last paragraph, that there are things that my immigrant family taught me that would be, all of those lessons would be gobbled up the moment humanoids hit the planet at scale. Gobbled up. Our children won't learn these same types of things. So that means they have to learn those same types of things differently. So the lesson will change. So to give you an example, my grandfather used to allow me, once I got old enough, to cut his lawn. Why? Because the lines had to be perfect. I couldn't use an edger. I had to use clippers. And he would sit there and look at the side of the lawn. And if one blade of grass was over the cement, he would point at it. And I would get angry that I missed it. Be like, oh, I'm sorry, Pop. Like, I'll go get that and take care of it. Right? All the way from my father that used to leave me a $1 bill behind the bathroom faucet. If I cleaned it, leave things better than when you found it. If I cleaned the faucet when I left the bathroom, there'd be a $1 bill behind it. And there were times when I was maybe lazy and I just didn't want to do it and I lost out on the $1. And my dad reminded me of that. But all of these things that we just talked about, that we just summarized, and then you pair that with Vinod Khosla's most recent presentation a couple months ago on the future of AI and how wrong he thinks people are about how fast the future will actually be here. Pair that with humanoids taking over some of these roles and responsibilities. And now I want you to think of it strictly from a sociological standpoint of a culture society, that these are lessons that were passed on to us that taught us attention to detail, leaving things better than when we found it, making sure that we know how to bucket tasks and create great atomic habits. What will happen when all of these little things that taught us how to do the big things right, what will shift? That's my question.
Well, yeah, I guess there are some, you got to believe there are some universal truths, universal values and lessons that we need to teach our children or our peers that, maybe the way in which those are taught will shift. But God help us if we lose the ability to teach some of those universal values. If we lose the ability because of technology, then I think we're in trouble. And I do think some people have made that argument. And I think Peter Thiel has this concern that we are losing the ability to sort of teach some of these family values, and social media, has sort of, digital technology and gaming, has sort of decreased the ability for families to sort of realize this sense of community and family value. And when that goes away, people wonder, do I need to get married? Do I need to have kids? And if there are less, families, people are less motivated to work hard to support a family, and things start to unravel and you hit stagnation. And so that's I think what could happen if we lose the ability to pass down these core universal values. I think it's upon all of us. It's like, technology is a living, breathing thing. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. So it is what it is. AI is here to stay. I think we need to figure out as humans, and maybe it's those folks that are creating the technology, they're the ones maybe most responsible for thinking through this. But how do we continue to pass along these values when the technology of the day changes the way in which it's passed down? So like I learned the value of hard work by having a lawn business, and the value of money. And if you want something, you've got to go work hard to make money to go buy it. I live in LA. We have a lawn person. My son's certainly not going to start a lawn business in LA, but there are certainly other ways to teach him that core value. And so I have to sort of think through that. And it's not going to be him being a YouTuber, that's for sure. But what are the ways that I can pass along those values to him, given the technology of the day, given the world he lives in? Frankly, I'm not sure. I probably need to spend some more time thinking about that.
So like to me, again, I hate that I keep bringing up Steve Jobs, but at the same time, he knew that the world was going to change when he saw that little girl. If you remember that story that he told, just grabbing an iPad and he just knew what to do with it, and he goes, "It's going to change everything." And so Nelson, same thing.
I think Kozla might have a point though, right? Like, I mean, Keynes in the 40s was like, hey, but in 50 years productivity is gonna be so high from technological development that people are gonna work 20 hours a week or less, and productivity is significantly higher, yet we still work the same amount or more. At least Americans do, right? So there is this question of we seem to always find work for ourselves to do. Like manufacturing kind of went down in the US, service economy went on the rise. Humanoid robots take over the service economy. What's like kind of the next economy or productivity? Or maybe we'll finally get to this kind of utopia or dystopia, depending on your take, of like people just spending their time learning music, reading poetry, playing video games or doing whatever. But how do we? I think the question of like how we keep to instill those values. I mean, I think hobbies, whether that's music or running or lifting, whatever it is, can still instill like many values, and like making sure that your kids learn kind of those fundamental skills is important. And I think just because there's other people to do it, my dad didn't call a plumber. He's like, Nelson, come change this toilet. Right. So instead of calling the robot to change the toilet, have your kid do it. You just have to make sure you keep instilling those values and putting limits on technology, right? Just like a lot of parents today put limits on screen time if they're smart about it.
That's right. Part of what you said, Nelson, really resonated with me around that there are these universal truths. And I'm so glad you brought up John Maynard Keynes, because one of the things in that essay that you're referring to, which is one of my all-time favorites, I have 2 separate prints on this, which is The Economic Possibilities for Our Grandchildren. That's the name of the essay that Nelson just mentioned. And a big part of that are these timeless lessons, which was the inspiration behind TLC Equation to begin with. There are these universal lessons that never change. They're unwilling to, because they're literally universal truths. So when you think about a universal lesson that you described, Mike, that I described, the universal lesson is just discipline. And so despite the economic surroundings in our lives may change, discipline is still something that's universal. How you do it, how you go about your day, how you manage and structure your time, all of these different things are universal truths. And so that's something that I really see in Brett, that there's this maniacal discipline about the way that he gives you and shows you that there's a very clear plan here, right? And here's where we are in that plan. And when I get this sense, to me, I know that this is something that both of you pay attention to, but I can guess pretty quickly and effectively how someone manages their time and how someone chooses to focus on their time, which, people say time is the most valuable resource. I disagree with that. In theory, time is not the most valuable resource. Your focus and attention is the most valuable resource. People waste my time. People steal my time. People take my time, right? All the time. But if it's on me to give them the discipline away of my focus and my attention. And that's something that when I was listening to Brett, and we've had, I don't know, a dozen, 24 conversations over the last year and a half or so. And I can tell you that there's always this element of, you are this part of my day, and we're going to talk about these things. And when we're done talking about these things, I'm going to have a laser focused ask for you, which tells me he's very organized in his mind. It doesn't need to be on paper, but in his mind, that I get a sniper ask request from him, not a shotgun request. Not, I don't know, just any intros would be helpful. It's like, no, here are the 20 people that I need to know in the next 6 months. And if you can do that in the next 2 weeks, my team will be on it and we'll be able to follow up effectively. You're kind of like, whoa, all right, roger that. Let's go. Like, you get motivated because now you have a sniper shot to take on behalf of the entrepreneur. And that speaks echoes to people. VCs were very willing to help. When we're really willing to help is when you know precisely what type of help you need. That is very encouraging to the investor class when speaking with entrepreneurs. So look, I want to make sure we talk about things too that really inspired both of you. So I would love to keep it casual. And where did your mind go and your heart go, or your spirit or your intellectualism go when you were listening to that initial podcast? Because God knows the three of us, if you were to re-listen to that, you weren't just re-listening to it. You were probably doing some emails, news, and then there was that one thing that you stopped and you go, that right there, that's a thing that resonates with me. So if you could prioritize what that is, let's have a conversation like that before we hop off about those things.
Well, I always find it fascinating when a successful entrepreneur who's done very well for themselves starts another company. That's very telling. And a successful entrepreneur who's doing it for the second or third time, you probably do pretty well for yourself, because those people are very unique, because there's a lot of things they could go become a VC. And no offense to VCs or myself, but it's, as a talent agent, you were taught in Hollywood that the artist is the center of the universe. Mm-hmm. We talked about being in the hospitality business. You are in service of the artist.
I love that. I love
them and their creation that makes the whole Hollywood ecosystem go. And without the artist, there's nothing. And, agents can become successful and powerful and start to think that, no, I'm the center of the universe. I actually pull the strings. And that's I don't believe that's true. And it's the same way in I think the tech ecosystem, where the VCs are in service of the entrepreneur. They are the center of the universe. They make everything go. And rightfully, and they, in success, they do become the wealthiest people in the world. They're entrepreneurs, and they get a lot of the spoils from their effort. But it is the hardest thing to do. I think there's no harder job in the world to be an entrepreneur. And when you do it 2 or 3 times, and I don't know, it's arguable, like, is it crazier to do it after you've had a failure and then you get back in? Or, is it crazier to do it after you become a multimillionaire and could do anything? You could become a VC, you could, invest your own money, you could buy an island, go retire. Like, it was really awesome to see Brent's focus. He's talking about working, he spent the night in the office, and the level of just discipline and work ethic the guy has, when clearly he doesn't need to be doing this like that. Yeah. That is really impressive to me. And there's not a lot of people like that out there to meet, but I want to meet all of them like that.
I want to meet all of them. That's right.
It's just amazing.
I agree. Look, I'm assuming here, he's never told me this, but that's where those Midwestern values come into play, right? He saw that. He's a product of that environment. He wanted to go off and do that. And these are also the everyone in venture talks about models, and, we talk about certain things, but we all know that psychologically there's something special about a founder that cannot be quantified all the time. It's impossible, right? To quantify Nelson and all that he is, and the healthy chip on his shoulder that he has to go build this thing. Like, there's no data. There's no track record to look at whether he will be a success or not. I am betting on the man or the woman in this early state of affairs. And so, Nelson, what are you thinking?
Yeah. I think the when you said chip on his shoulder, that resonated a little bit, in that, like, I think every entrepreneur and founder has something they want to prove, right? And I think that's really important, whether that's to themselves or other people or the world. I'm not entirely sure what that is for Brett, but I have no doubt that there's some sort of, even though he doesn't have to do this, there's some sort of chip on his shoulder, something he wants to prove. And I feel that myself. And I think, as I was listening to it, what kind of just permeated for me was like, I was like furiously like comparing notes of like, is he doing something that I should also be doing or I'm not doing already? And like, how can I like be better at like running my company or doing my things? And, I think that's, just the mindset I'm in. And so that's what kind of percolated is like, and I think there is, I'm constantly trying to think of like, how can we do what we're doing better? I mean, we've moved really fast, but how can we move faster? How can we keep up that speed? I think all those things are things that worry me, right? And I feel an urgency about, because kind of getting to Mike's point, urgency is kind of the core of it, right? You feel an urgency to do things, and it's just important to like harness that urgency and make sure it doesn't make you frenetic or make you do the wrong things too, right? But I think those are the things that percolated from that conversation to me.
Yes, constant this healthy contrast and comparison, right? You brought that up too, which really resonates with me. I'm typically trying to figure out through the initial phone call and conversations, because these are two very different things when you're trying to measure this with a founder. Are they trying to prove something to themselves, or are they trying to prove something to the world? And that's a spectrum. And I'm trying to figure out, for me, proving something to the world seems a bit finite. Proving something to yourself is infinite. Those are two very different mindsets. You can never rely on external justification for anything. This is a very stoic way to look at this spectrum, right? Like, I want to prove to myself that having no background, no formal education, in investing or in finance whatsoever, that I know that the people skill sets that I have to analyze a person, that person has value to go build something enormous and create enormous value in the markets. I've always been grown up. I was raised that way, to look at value first and values first.
Yeah, I think you get to the heart of what like true ambition is, right? And that like you're never on some level satisfied. You always have this like goal in mind, this thing you want to prove, and then you get there and you prove it, and you're like, but I also want to prove this thing now, right? That comes up, and you just keep hitting those targets and keep going. And I think that is a really powerful force. Is it always the healthiest thing? I don't know. I think you have to figure out how to balance it and how to make sure that you also take those moments to enjoy where you at in life and what you've accomplished. And that's something I try and do sometimes, just like, hey, wait, I have done these things. And kind of like you're talking about earlier, Mike, about you meet, a singer or an actor, and you're like super famous, and they don't really they just kind of think they're a normal person. I think it's very easy to lose track of what you have like done well or what you have achieved. And sometimes it's important to remind yourself of that. But also kind of keep that ambition moving and moving forward and always reaching for that next thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as someone that came out of Hollywood and is now investing in space companies and defense companies, I mean, I have incredible imposter syndrome, which really motivates me. And it's funny. I used to tell my wife I had this fear of becoming homeless. Like, I remember I cashed in my 401k to buy her engagement ring because I was an assistant making no money, and I wanted to buy her some kind of respectable ring. So I literally sold. My parents aren't listening, my retirement savings. And I would joke with her and say, if I lose my job and can't find, like, I have nothing to fall back on. Like, I've burnt my bridges, like, and that, I've done better for myself since then, but I still have that sense of like, this could all be gone. Maybe I can't raise my next fund. I've got 2 kids and these expenses, and it could all go away tomorrow. And that's incredibly motivating. I don't feel secure. Maybe from the outside looking in, oh man, you've started this venture fund, you've raised 3 funds and all this success. And I don't feel that way. I feel like it could be gone tomorrow, which is incredibly motivating. I feel like I need to, and I hope that I never want to lose that. And you talked about Vinod Khosla. That guy still works as hard. He plans to work as hard for the next 20. I want to know what, because he's clearly successful. Like the guy, like, but what motivates him to work as hard as he works? Like what is it about these people? For me, it's a bit of, a notion of fear. I mean, it's also curiosity. I am like insatiably curious. I'm a knowledge addict. I joke and say like, it's like someone who's addicted to cigarettes getting to work at a cigarette factory. That's the job I found for myself. If someone's addicted to knowledge, I get to acquire knowledge every day. So as long as I'm a knowledge addict, maybe I'll also love this job because it just satisfies this addiction in me. But it's also fear of appearing stupid to really smart people that just motivates me to study and work hard and learn as much as I can.
Look, there's a great, that really spoke to me, and it made me think of a quote, one of the greatest philosophers of all time. What will it profit a man if he gains the world and loses his soul? And the way I think about that quote is, what if the man gains the world and finds his soul? And what I mean by that is when you find what you were literally meant to do. We've heard this before, that classical Mark Twain quote, the 2 best days are when you are born, and then you figure out why. Those are the 2 best days of any person's life. And I feel like when you find the why you were supposed to be here and you actually discover and define your soul, that only makes you want to do more of that thing. So when people talk about work-life balance and all these things, it's actually, it's work-life harmony. It's trying to find this harmony between your obsession and then things and people who also require you to love them just as much, right? Even though they know that what you are doing every day from 7 to 7, losing track of time, I'm down here in the bunker, like I can't not work on this because it's a part of my soul. And by the way, the philosopher that said that was Jesus. So I always bring that up last because everyone's like, oh, that's pretty good. Who said that? I was like, well, it's Jesus Christ, the greatest philosopher in the history of the world. So I bring that up because both of you have that energy to you. It's maniacal. It's indescribable. You don't understand it, but like most people don't understand most things that they love in their life. It doesn't need to be understood. It needs to be released. And Mike, the way you talked about, if you weren't doing venture, you would be doing something like venture, right? And if you weren't doing that, and you would be doing something like that. I try to find people that are doing things that if they weren't doing it, they would just be doing a variation of that very same thing regardless. So this has been a really powerful exchange. What's one lightning round question that you love to ask, Mike, people that you interact with? I'm not a normal cocktail party guy where I'll walk up and say, hey, so tell me what you love doing. And like people are like, wait, what? You didn't ask me like what I'm doing in my life or what my job is. It's like, no, tell me what you love to do. And sometimes that's not work. But Mike, what's that question that you like typically get a response to that makes people go, huh, like, that's a new one. Like I haven't had that. And then same to you, Nelson, and we'll ask each other our favorite version of that.
Well, there's a few, and some are more, kind of, I don't know, philosophical or heady, and some are more. But, I again, kind of going back to my mom and the sense of wanderlust, I always like to ask, like, just more in social, like, what's an experience you had? It could be a travel experience. It could be something traumatic that you'll never forget, that sort of, you dream about still, that has totally shaped you, and it's just obvious. And I'll ask that of founders as well, because I am trying to kind of get the essence of who they are and what drives them. But like, what is that life experience that if you can, boil it down to one that you feel has shaped you more than anything else? And if you've had one, it usually pours out of you pretty quickly. I like asking that. And then, for founders, I like to ask them, like, imagine yourself 10 years from now, whatever, you're ringing the NYSE bell, and you're looking back on this journey of building this company, and all the ups and downs and the trauma and the big wins and all that stuff. Like, what are the 3 moments that you would point to that, you could say, these were the 3 moments that were the true turning points in my journey? Like, if it would have gone the other way, it would have been a totally different outcome. What are those 3 moments that led you to this moment? And if someone can can answer that pretty clearly. Again, it goes back to that sense of vision. Like they've thought a lot about their journey ahead of them and why they're undertaking it, and what it will take to get to the promised land. And if someone can answer that clearly, I tend to get really excited about them and what they're doing.
Yep, I love that. Tell me about the emotionally shaping moments in your life, either positive or negative. I love that. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So, look, I can be topical if I can, just to stay on the surface. Otherwise, that alone would take up a whole fireside chat.
Yeah.
But there are these turning. I've thought a lot about this. This is the reason why I love that. Asking a very similar question about the emotionally shaping moments in your life is because it points to the ability to be self-reflective, whether it's about trauma, things that were traumatic, that forged you, that molded you, or the things that were watching the, Michael Jordan play with your dad in the rafters and the nosebleeds. That was also emotionally shaping for me in a positive way. And I relive it all the time in my head.
Oh, yeah.
All the time, right?
Yeah. Nelson, I was just thinking, I think when we spoke in October, because I've been on this journey about how to ask the right questions to founders to get at the essence of who they are. Do you get a sense, like, is there like a line of questioning certain VCs ask, like, oh, okay, this is a person that's trying to get the heart of me, or this is a person that's more trying to get the heart of my market or my product?
Yeah, I think most fall in the camp of like getting the heart of product, market, company. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely folks who like Joe and yourself who do ask, different questions around like why this, right? Well, why are you doing this? And I think those are the broad questions I actually like to ask, because someone can just take it any damn way they want, right? And then you learn even more if you don't like guide them too much into a question. But anyway, and they'll ask questions about your philosophy around leadership or building a company and stuff like that. And I think that's definitely important. I mean, I think it's important to understand how someone will approach leadership and approach building a good culture, because I have seen it firsthand. When a culture goes negative, or and how much that can ruin productivity and ruin progress.
I mean, would you find it weird if a VC straight up asked you, tell me about your childhood trauma, and how does that motivate you now? Because I mean, like Doug Leone famously used to ask that he would sort of come in like, I was beat up in Sicily, at the water fountain, but like he straight up asked founders, maybe sometimes first meeting, tell me about your childhood trauma. And I haven't gone that far, because that seems like maybe a weird one to ask a founder, but like, would you be like, this isn't like a psychological exam here. Slow your roll, man.
I feel like it kind of is, though. That's why I love Leone. It is, right?
Yeah, it kind of is.
Let's not tiptoe around it. Like, I need to know what adversity timeline he has faced throughout his life. And you talked a little bit about it, Nelson, about your father. You've experienced loss. You've experienced a sense of responsibility that was clearly passed on to you. And so Mike, one thing that I flip is the question is when have you displayed moral courage? And that's a question that you'll see a founder like pause, like kind of look up into the right, and really get organized around their answer. And that's another way to ask about, sometimes things that are traumatic are, in fact, things that you had to display in against a popular opinion, otherwise known as moral courage, right? I thought it was just something you had, and not everybody has that. So therefore, it's a skill that you've developed, right? So you should be able to learn and have the words to talk about those things.
Yeah, I mean, I think questions like that can work and can make sense. I think, what is your childhood trauma? I think like it's not necessarily in their childhood what's shaped them and what the trauma is, but I think it's important to understand like what got you to this point, like what motivates you, like what's like driving you. And I think there's many ways in which that can come about, but
100%.
I think it's an important thing to get the heart of, and I don't think a lot of VCs do it. And even I think when I was a VC, I think I kind of failed at that often. So.
Yeah, it goes back. Great VCs are, for me, listening tours are very helpful. before I've ever done or accomplished or executed something new in my life that I felt was going to be like a next chapter, I have to be very specific about a listening tour. So for the foundation that I created, I listened to 215 special operators across the country over 6 months. And I have to understand deeply to get over that imposter syndrome, because we never really get over it. We're kind of living with it, or snuggling with it. More better word for it is you kind of like snuggle up next to it to better understand yourself and what you're actually, why you actually feel that way. But that was one of the things that came up across the listening tour, is you can jump this learning curve and you realize the best founders think, act, feel, and communicate a certain way. Brett, he thought, the way he acts, the way he communicates, and the way he structures his day and life and work, it sounds a certain way, and it sounds a lot like some of the greatest founders and entrepreneurs the world's ever seen. VCs, the same thing. You find the great VCs. I also call some of the later generation venture philosophers, because they get to this certain point in their life where they've seen so many things. Their instinct is finely tuned. The pattern recognition is seconds, and nothing even gets to them that doesn't fill this quota or this connective tissue that their folks know that they have to pass on or up to that particular partner because they might be interested. So they also have this pattern of operating systems that I try to look at and emulate. And the majority of those folks, mind you, they've gone through this technical diligence up front with a lot of the folks behind the scenes, but all they focus on are the qualitative parts of that. So yes, all the quant's done up front, but when they get to this venture philosopher, it's all about the person, and can this person overcome adversity? These are some of the most common questions that I heard from them. So it's all from them. It's all from the top returning VCs that the planet has ever seen. And honest to God, they could be easily categorized into those 8 themes of TLC Equation: vision, mission, values, principles, ethos, meaning their character. How do they define their character? Equals, this is how you attract extraordinary teams, leaders, and cultures. This is what they were trying to wrap their arms around. I am a framework guy like you, Mike. I checklist, okay, like I want to see it and feel it. But I also realize that those elements, those driving forces of that equation, they're always in play. It's never systematic. These are living things that are constantly happening all the time. That's the qualitative lens that I like to go in and ask questions around. It stems from those people. So anyways, final thoughts. This is the question I wanted to ask you. Here's my rapid fire lightning last question for Nelson. You're writing your memoirs many years from now, right? You're a Gandalf the Grey at this point in your life. And I want to know the first line, your opening line of your memoir, and the final line of your memoir.
That's a good question. Opening line and final line. Okay. Well, opening line, he didn't often wear shoes. Final line, hopefully it's something about me still being alive.
I like that.
My creativity on the opening line.
The opening line, he didn't often wear shoes. The final line, and yet he walks on.
Yeah, still alive.
There it is. And yet he walks on.
Hopefully.
And Mike, how about you?
Oh God, I have to answer this.
Opening and closure.
God, opening line. Something along the lines of like a path uncharted, because my career has been anything but linear or, with a lot of forethought.
Yeah.
I think it's just me adapting to situations in life that, happened to me. And I'm glad I ended up where I was, but I did not ever think I would be doing what I was doing, when I was in high school or college. So sort of a path unforeseen, would be something along the lines of how it started.
Love that.
And, the ending line would be something along the lines of what you said of, he found his purpose. He found his thing, his reason for being. And this is it. I mean, this is hopefully the last job I ever have. I want to be known for someone that, lived his life in service of other brilliant people and whose hard work enabled their success. And like you said, played a very tiny role in, changing the world and through helping these entrepreneurs do what they were put here to do. I mean, it's such a great job. It's just, and so I that's what I want to be known for. So hopefully it ends with something along those lines.
I love that. Mike, I can see it. Mike, his life was a lattice, not a ladder. So good.
Okay, Joe, you're writing both of our bios, so
so good.
Yeah, when are you opening the messaging agency?
So good.
Yeah.
So good. Well, look, is there anything else on your mind or heart that you guys want to talk about that we didn't get to?
Yeah, enjoyed the conversation. It was great.
Yeah, I really did. And one of the things that I'm trying to get better at is we say this a lot, like, this founder was great, or like he's going to be a great fundraiser, or he can really recruit, and, without really understanding sort of what's baked into that comment, and your comments about, values lead to vision, lead to followership. That's what makes for a good fundraiser. That's what makes for someone who can attract the best people. And so this has actually been helpful to me to get sort of closer to those like atomic units of what, really draws our feelings around a person that, they're great or they're a great fundraiser. It's sort of getting down to these core things. And I think it's honestly going to help me be a better VC, is to think more deeply about these things, about mission, vision, values, and TLC, because that is sort of the core of what we're looking to find out here as VCs. And so it's been fun. It's been great. And thank you for inviting me on to the Aftershow.
Thank you for joining us on TLC Equation, the Aftershow. A heartfelt thank you to Mike and Nelson for diving deep into TLC Equation. Remember, this equation is your quiet guide and blueprint for building, forging, and attracting extraordinary teams, leadership, and culture. Continue exploring these ideas along your journey. And please follow us on YouTube or wherever podcasts are found. Until next time, become extraordinary.